solemn but a very important day in our calendar and in our lives. We want to introduce you to our Holocaust Torah. Yes, yours and mine. And we must protect this Torah and keep it here always through our children, grandchildren, and on further. This Torah was numbered by the Nazis, number 986, and the painted inscription of their number is still on here. I'd like to put my little talk into two sections. One, the history of this Torah, and number two, how we acquired the Torah. In the late 1930s, when the German soldiers came into Czechoslovakia, the Jewish people helped gather and document the religious articles that they were bringing into the Prague Museum. The Jewish people, of course, did not know what the eventual purpose would be. When it became clear that this was a documentation of a people that the Nazis thought will no longer be, it took on an entirely different connotation. The Torahs, the Sidurim, the silver, the Kiddush cups, all of the Torah silver was brought into the Prague Museum. When the war was over and the communist government took over, they made it the State Museum of Prague, and all of the Torahs were sent to the basement of the Mikla synagogue to be stored there. Somehow they knew what to do with the silver, and they created a portion of their museum for those articles. Nearly 19 years later, they looked in the basement of the Mikla synagogue, the officials, and said, what are we going to do with all of this parchment? Some of it was still pretty much intact, although this Torah is not considered kosher for reading. But they were going to make the Mikla synagogue into a church, and they had to do something with what, from floor to ceiling, Torah scrolls. There was an art dealer in London by the name of Eric Esterick, who was coincidentally an American but lived in London, and he did a lot of dealing with the Czechoslovakian art groups called Artia. Somehow the Czech government did not want to send these or sell these or give these Torahs to the United States, a capitalistic country. So they talked to Mr. Esterick, and because they had confidence in him, because he was selling in England some of the Czechoslovakian art, they felt that they could speak to him. He went back to London and told Rabbi Reinhardt from the Westminster Synagogue that there were many Torahs from floor to ceiling in his basement, and Czechoslovakia was willing to sell them. They found a philanthropist who was willing to go and look at the numbers, and that he happened also to be an American living in England. I thought that was interesting. And they found a sofer, a Rabbi Abramsky, who would go too. So the three of them went and they opened up the basement doors, and these three men started to cry. It was like corpses laying from floor to ceiling, hundreds of Torahs. They made a decision, Czechoslovakia made the decision that they were going to ask the equivalent of American dollars, $30,000, which this philanthropist was willing to supply And soon after that, in 1964, I mean, you're talking about 19 years after that they're sitting there, longer than 19 years. And they start loading them on boxcars and then on trucks to transport them to the Westminster Synagogue. The Westminster Synagogue had prepared, as you can see by these posters, they had prepared racks to lay out the Torahs. They supplied 3 rooms.
Bernie,
You know, that was fun.
And
wrong way.
all of the Torahs. Now, this one, 986, was so unbelievable that close to 1,000. If you look closely on these posters, you'll see numbers into the 10,000s. And it's absolutely horrifying. When the Torahs got to Westminster Synagogue, there were 1,564 Torahs. And they proceeded to renumber them. And now the number that we know and that we want to continue to know is number 289 out of 1,564. That is our Torah. The experience for this Torah was horrifying. And I call this, when I go to speak to the children at Perlman, I say, this is a survivor as well. Like humans, the Torah is a survivor, and we must allow it to continue to survive. I want to thank particularly Steve Nussbaum, because he discovered in the showing and checking the Torahs that we have here at Beth Sholom, that this Torah was put into the wrong Torah cover. And he discovered that in the hours that he spent examining with Rabbi Lazarovsky. So the Torah almost perished twice. And we thank Steve for that life-saving. Now, how did we get the Torah here? Well, I was the projects coordinator for the Foreman Hebrew Day School, which was housed here, a small but wonderful school under the guidance and direction and patience of Sora Landis. The fact that you're here today and is quite bashired, I think. And I read in the paper that they were giving out Torahs to local synagogues for teaching or for use, whatever the condition was. And I went to Sora and I said, I had just started working there in 1981, and I said, may I send a letter to the Westminster Synagogue requesting a Torah? And she said, of course. And I did, and the letter came back from their representative, Ruth Schaefer, that they weren't sure that they wanted to give a Torah to such a small school. And was there some other institution that I could couple it with? So I went to Rabbi Aaron Landis of blessed memory, and I said, what do you think? And he said, absolutely. He sent the letter to them, and so the Torah was going to come to the Beth Sholom congregation and the Foreman Hebrew Day School. That was during the summer of 1981. In October of 1981, I received a letter that, yes, we are going to be given on permanent loan a Torah, number 289, and it will be to the Foreman Hebrew Day School and the Beth Sholom congregation. And they will be packing it up and shipping it international shipping. I read that letter, I was at work, and I go into Sora's office and I said, may I go home for about a half an hour? And she said, are you okay? I said, yes, I have to speak to Larry. Okay, sure. So I go and I said, we just got the letter that we are getting the Torah. And they're going to pack it up and ship it, just like cargo. He said, and I don't want that. Well, what do you want? I want you and I and our 3 children to go to England to pick it up. It deserves that. And of course, like Zora said, Larry said, go ahead. Okay, we'll do it. So I wrote back to Mrs. Schaefer that we'll be coming over the winter break in December to receive the Torah. And that plan in itself was so emotional and so wonderful. And we went to speak to Mrs. Reinhardt, who was the widow of the, I think the original Rabbi Reinhardt at the Westminster Synagogue. She was living there in an apartment in the synagogue, and she was tending to all of the Torah pickups. So we take it, and the 3 kids, 2 of them in college, 1 in middle school, and we take it to our hotel room, and we're like, we don't know what to do. We're protecting it, we're sitting with it, we don't want to leave it there, we don't want to leave the room. Finally, the day comes that we're ready to leave, and Mrs. Schaefer had provided me with a proper documentation, all stamped and sealed, that this Torah would be picked up to take to, it's interesting, they said, to take to the States. And so we're very confident, and the 5 of us go to the airport. The airport story is Larry's story.
We were there, of course, over Shabbat. Sunday morning, we go to the airport, and of course it has to go through the customs and has to go through, we went through security. So 2 agents, one says the other, it looks like swords. And he said, no, it's a scroll. I said, yes, it's a Hebrew scroll. Well, you can't take this out of the country. And I showed them the letter. So they want to call Westminster Synagogue at 9 o'clock Sunday morning. There's nobody there. It was actually happened to be a Reformed congregation, by the way. But anyway, nothing. So they bring out another official, and he goes, he looks, yes, it's a scroll, and then we show him the letter also. Well, they go back and forth. They went to a small office. They come out, and they say, okay, the scroll stays here, and you people get on the plane. So I don't know where I mustered up the chutzpah. I said, sir, you see the scroll? And you see these 5 people here? We stay with the scroll. When the scroll is released, we'll go with it. So he looked at me back in the office again. He said, all right, get on the plane with the scroll. And I carry it on. Of course, then the stewardess says, sir, may I take that from you? No. We held that all the way here.
When we got here, and you'll see some pictures out in the breakfast area, Yaakov Lieberman and Rabbi Landis greeted the Torah. It was so moving for all of us and for the children as well, because these children were well educated on different levels, different grades, different levels of the Shoah. And so Sora gave me permission again to create a Torah cover. And I was, in addition to my other volunteer services, I was the head of Cub Scouts at that school. And so I had the Cub Scouts make the Torah cover. And it was just a remarkable experience. Then Rabbi Landis calls me into his office one day. He got a letter from a Mr. Pick. I don't remember his first name. I don't remember. Mr. Pick from New York. And he sends us this emotional letter. He sent me a copy also, although Rabbi Landis didn't know it at the time, that Mr. Pick was from Malata, Boleslav, which is where the Torah comes from. And he was already, I think, about 90 when he sent the letter. And in such an emotional letter, he said that he and his brother used to carry the Torah, dress and undress the Torah in their little shul in Malata, Boleslav. And he feels that that was the Torah that he and his brother were carrying and were dressing and undressing. This is the gartel that came with it. We have no idea the origin, but it doesn't matter because that came with this Torah. And he hopes that the children in our school will continue loving this Torah, and he feels that it's been given a new life. Now we no longer have Foreman Hebrew Day School here, but we do have the Perlman Jewish Day School, and we are all the guardians of this Torah. The Foreman Hebrew Day School, the Perlman Jewish Day School, children are the guardians of this Torah. Larry and I won't be here forever. Please don't let this out of our sight. Now when you come up to the Aron Kodesh, just look in the corner and make sure that our little Torah is still standing there. Thank you, Steve, for that discovery. I had the chutzpah to hang a note on the Eitz Chaim saying, this is the Holocaust Torah. If you want to move it, do anything with it, you have to contact us. But whatever, so please.
We're hoping also that it'll be on display in an appropriate place soon.
One of these days. Tomorrow morning, we're taking it to Perlman Jewish Day School, and just as a coincidental opposite ends of the scope, we're taking it in the afternoon to the Abramson Center, where there are still survivors. And it is, you can imagine the experience there. Our granddaughter Isabella will be going with us, and she carries the Torah to the survivors to kiss. So this is a very important day, and please remember 289. Thank you.
For Kaddish Torah, we also want to let you know that the kids in our religious school get to see it, and there are pictures of some of our survivors in our community with this
Actually,
Torah.
they are partners in this too, by the way, yes.
This evening at Melrose is our community Yom HaShoah Memorial Program. There's regular minyan at AJ tonight at 7, but at 7:30 at Melrose. Over there, there'll be a program for Yom HaShoah that is being done by all the rabbis and cantors in the Kehillah. It begins at 7:30. There'll be readings and memorials and speakers. 2 survivors will be speaking, and I hope you'll be able to attend and to bring people with you for that.